Welcome to the Tech Leaders Podcast, Talent Special. I interviewed Ed Dixon, who set up a business called Bayesian back in January of this year. He comes from a corporate business development and technology background. He set up this business on the premise and on the mission of bridging the gap between education and industry and bridging the talent shortage gap in general. It's a really interesting model. He's back in the trend. He's doing really well. We go through Ed's background. We talk about his current business model, and we talk about the current pandemic situation, how this is going to change things going forward. It's a really insightful conversation. We cover some really good areas, so I hope you enjoy it. This is Ed Dixon. Ed Dixon, thank you for joining us. This is an episode I've been really excited about recording. Tell us about Ed, tell us about your background from the point of leaving education right up to now.
So I've had a mistaken career actually. I got into IT accidentally. Back in the early 90s, there wasn't really a career in computing and technology. It wasn't a natural progression. So at that time when I was applying to universities, I was thinking about what to do and sitting in a very unsure position as to what the future would look like. But underpinning my youth, I was a programmer and an early geek in the ZX81 and Spectrum and BBC Micro. So actually, I really loved that, and I was passionate about that. And I never ever thought that there would be a career in that area. And I was walking down a high street, and back then there was recruitment really was a job board in a window, and it was an IT operator. So I applied and was successful, and I was lucky enough to have a really, really good mentor. She set up my career pretty much from that moment onwards, and I've not looked back since. So yeah, I mean it's been an interesting career. I mean I've seen and I've always thought that there's an opportunity in any industry at inflection points, at major change, and our industry in terms of IT is at the forefront of that. So I've seen the mainframe, the demise of the mainframe, and the rise of distributed systems, the internet, in terms of the impact that's had, and really, over a career, I've been lucky enough to be in a position to take advantage of these inflection points, and really we're at probably the biggest one, that we will see in our lifetime. It will have the biggest impact on society in the area of data science and specifically, AI.
No, absolutely. So you obviously left university with a business studies degree.
Yep.
And then you made it all the way up to sales director of Capgemini, yeah? So talk us through that initial journey and how you got to that point.
Well, interestingly enough, my entrepreneurial life started early on. I actually, in a similar situation today, I saw an opportunity with the rise of distributed systems and the rise of virtualization. I was finding it difficult in the role that I was in to find skills and capability. So I set up my own business.
Oh, really?
That my first real soiree into IT entrepreneurship. It was the .com era, contractors. I was contracting, and I saw this opportunity. So that really was a large part of my career and really created the foundation. And then was successful in terms of exiting that business, and then was offered an opportunity through a friend of mine to go and run the transformation services business from a sales perspective at Capgemini, and that really got me into the big business engagement.
That must have been a bit of a culture shock, going from being your own boss to working for one of the biggest corporate IT companies, well, in Europe certainly. So
yeah, absolutely. I think the interesting thing was the governance and the ability when you have your own business to make slight directional changes in your strategy is good. To be able to make decisions about investment, is easy. But when you're working on very, very large transactions that carry a significant cost to bid and win, and we were very successful there. You understand, and very quickly, it's a good mentorship there. Mark Devonshire, a good friend of mine, really gave me some really strong coaching and mentorship on really how to navigate a large organisation to be successful, and most importantly to deliver on your clients' expectations.
Yeah, because it's all good and well being a good salesman, but then you've got the small matter of delivery, then, haven't you?
Well, this is it. Creating a culture of a winning culture across a virtual team to be successful, but at the same time, deliver on KPIs of the organisation, and on numerous occasions, having the confidence to challenge the organisation to be successful. But absolutely, there's no real value in delivering an outcome for a client that isn't successful. It doesn't meet the objectives, because you don't build a reputation doing that.
No, you build yourself a reputation, but not a good one.
Not a good one.
So you had this sort of, I suppose it's like a entrepreneur's boot camp, really. You went in, this capitalism at the sharp end. You went in, you built a business, you had a good exit, you had a brilliant experience as in a corporate organisation. I think you had 2 spells at DXC thereafter. Talk us through the end of last year and what was going through your mind in terms of this new business venture.
Yeah.
You'd obviously done something similar before in your younger days or whatever.
Yeah.
You clearly wanted to go on a similar journey again.
Yeah,
Obviously,
absolutely.
you clearly enjoyed it, and you needed to select the right area. Talk us through that.
And I think I touched on earlier on in the identify an opportunity in the inflection points of change in our industry. And I was DXC, great organisation. Like many organisations of its size, it is also trying to transform to be able to deliver on the customer's digital transformation. And actually, when the industry is changing in that more and more organisations are insourcing, so they're bringing that digital transformation in-house. They're moving from single monolithic ITO contracts, so one contract, delivering all IT services, to hundreds and in some cases thousands of contracts. And programs are being delivered by organisations themselves, working with smaller organisations that bring innovation and agility. So actually, I experienced numerous occasions where, because of the rate of development, certainly in the area of data science and machine learning, and at the time, interesting enough, automation, there just wasn't, the skills just didn't exist. So actually, it's a leveler. Data science is a leveler. So, we're just as capable of delivering a project for an organisation or delivering skills into an organisation as some of the big boys. So I'm sitting there, struggling myself, and to really deliver on the objectives of my client. And as I say, data science, you can't train someone to be a data scientist who's had 10 years experience in Java. You can't just learn Python, you can't learn R, you can't learn the Spark stack. You can't learn that and be a data scientist. You need to have that advanced maths. So it's the classic Venn diagram of advanced mathematics, very, very strong coding, and that domain experience.
Yeah.
So looking at the challenges that I faced, in terms of and the opportunity that I saw, it became very clear that actually, there's a need, there is a demand. The skills gap in the area of AI and machine learning it could have GDP impact. The government has recently announced that they're investing hundreds of millions to train PhDs in AI, so that we can keep up as a country, as a nation. Yeah. So actually, it's a huge inflection point. And that's why we saw the opportunity. And you throw in things like freedom of movement and right to work, IR35. I don't know if you're familiar with IR35. So lots of organisations use contract staff and that as contractors. The tax implications around that are changing. So actually, that is having a big impact for organisations. So I think we're at this inflection point where actually, if we're to do this, where are we going to find these resources, and where are organisations going to find these resources? So when you think about data science, we've got PhDs in seismology, in stats. We've got an astrophysicist. These are individuals that have been for the last 5-6 years working with huge data sets, creating data visualization from those. Programming in Python. At the sharp end of R and machine learning with R. And so actually, the bit that they're missing is the vocational piece, but they're actually better suited than retraining your existing organizations. So actually, we have these data scientists in their own right, and what we're doing is giving them that vocational coaching, giving them, preparing them for really, really strong projects, and ultimately setting them up to be successful. Our goal is to launch, accelerate, and support careers of individuals at the start of their career.
I think the vocational coaching is really interesting because this is probably an amplified example of the kind of what you're doing is you're bridging the gap from academia into industry, aren't you? Absolutely. And I think that bridge is a lot longer than it should be. Do you see what I mean? And we see this all the time. As someone who tries to hire people who's been, for our company and obviously on behalf of other companies, there's, academia, university, education does not prepare people in the UK sufficiently for industry in many different vocational areas.
Spot on.
And that is an issue.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that the part of your model is to bridge that gap, solve that problem.
Absolutely.
So I just a question to bolt on to that then. You've obviously selected data analytics, data science, data engineering as your segue into that market. What are your plans in terms of expanding into other talent-driven verticals, i.e. cybersecurity, application development, and others? Is that on the business plan?
Interestingly enough, we're looking to double down on our focus and grow with the maturity of data science, machine learning, and then ultimately AI. We could position ourselves as being able to be all things and all people, starting at the sharp end of AI. But the reality is there's lots of organizations that are trying to industrialize the generation of insights. So getting the fundamentals of data science right, productionizing those insights through machine learning, that's the direction of travel for us. So we're going to go up the stack in terms of value rather than broaden out.
I understand.
But to your point about bridging the gap, I read something the other day. I think it was from the Open University, a study of over 250 organisations. That they 21% said that the individuals coming out of education were prepared for work. And so it's pretty shocking. And also it highlighted that graduates, 90% of them get employed. So that's really good. That's really positive. And we should understand why the 10%, and it may be their own choice. But what's hidden in those numbers, is that of the 800,000 last year employed, 380,000 of them were underemployed. So they're doing jobs that are under the capability of potentially the degree, that the education that's got them there. So what we're doing is trying to identify those individuals that have already made a decision they want to be data scientists. I want to be a data scientist. So not wanting to deride the graduate programs, organizations are having to reconsider the graduate programs purely because of the need to bring skills on and get them. You can't afford a 2-year rotation and then decide what that grad's going to do. So actually, Bayesian is very, 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 very focused on identifying those individuals that want to be data scientists and accelerating their career. And because we're starting at those at the early stage of their career, and not limited to, but the majority of them will be young people, but not limited to. Everyone grows up. So, our objective is that every 6 months they're going to write their job description. Every year they're going to write their job description. Because as the maturity of the industry and we evolve more and more into the world of machine learning and then in turn into AI, we're building the innovators and leaders today for that.
So how do you facilitate that coaching and training then? Or is that sort of through partners? Is it through...
So it's a great question. So one of the things that came out of some early conversations with some of my colleagues and friends was actually, I was very surprised about the number of people that were willing to get involved and help. So very quickly, and someone coined, I'm happy to be an ambassador. So we have Bayesian ambassadors, anything from CIOs, CTOs, leaders of startups, agile methodology consultancies, lots of different individuals. I was talking to a lady this week who wants to get much more involved in women in the workplace. So the idea that she can come and engage. So actually, the in addition to structured coaching and structured training, so be that programming, that's easy to do. The coaching and the vocational piece will be a combination of learning, but also mentorship from the ambassadors.
Yeah, I just want to latch on to something you said earlier on. You benefited from having obviously a very good mentor. I think this was
absolutely
quite early on in your career.
First job. Yeah.
Talk us through that experience and what you got from that.
So it's interesting. I'm not sure whether Angela wanted to do Just Angela, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
She'll. I don't think she was planning to be a mentor. She was just very good at it, and recognizing that I was young. Recognizing that I had something that was reasonably unique at that time.
You were quite fresh out of uni at this point, yeah?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Very, very young in terms of the IT industry, but I was unique in the sense that I had this underpinning programming. I'd written games. I was a programmer. So she nurtured that. But what was really important, and it almost comes back to once again what was driving the Bayesian thought process, was that she was very good at coaching me in situations that I didn't know I needed to consider. So, good example, meeting the CEO of the company, I was petrified. So she coached me through, how to engage, prepared me, if anything, just prepared me for that engagement.
Yeah, I understand,
for someone, and gave me a sense of what his pressures were, and ultimately from the strategic direction of the business, its KPIs, to the job that I did every day, how did they link up? So when I sat, it was more of a conversation than a petrified. The converse of that is, I know someone that didn't have that, and even today is petrified meeting, senior execs.
No, absolutely.
And he joked with me. He said, I'm still imagining them naked. The whole. So that's an example where I look back now and if someone had, if I hadn't have had that, I'm not sure I would have been as confident early on in.
So this has really had a big impact in your career, and it must have been probably the one of the core reasons for you that motivated you to set up a business like Bayesian, was because you benefited from a mentor. You're essentially taking that model to the market, aren't you?
Absolutely. That was the key thing. That was the I suppose the pivotal point in this. I had 100 ideas and qualified out on 99% of them. Was that there's an opportunity here to fundamentally fix a problem in terms of a skills gap, but do it with individuals that are sponges, they're willing to learn, and you're I want to look back in 5 years' time and look at the first cohort that have come through, and see them how they've developed, and actually help promote them to go and get another job, to go and push themselves harder.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were sort of, giving advice to maybe a young entrepreneur, okay, who's going on a similar journey to what you did back then, who would be interested in getting a mentor, how do you think is it? Sorry, let me rephrase that. What do you think is a good way to go about finding a mentor? Because it's quite daunting, isn't it? Going up to somebody and say, "Will you mentor me?" Especially if it's for free, and you're expecting this successful, super busy business person to give you time, and you hardly know them. What sort of advice would you give on that one?
So the number one thing I would say is you've got to ask, and you'll be surprised how responsive individuals will be. And one thing that I've always found difficult is there's quite often a suggestion that you need a mentor that's not at work or is different to what you do. So I have seen situations where people have sought out different parts of the business, but actually I believe that if you work, your boss can be your mentor, but it's a different engagement when you're switching into mentor mode, because you're, a mentee mode, you can talk about a situation at work that happened, and you can, black box thinking, you can deconstruct it, understand why it happened, and get your coaching from there. So number one, I'd absolutely ask, because, and you'll be surprised, however busy someone is, there are a lot of individuals yearning to do more mentorship. So, and number two, I would keep it closer to your career, rather than looking outside.
So how has the recent pandemic situation affected your business then, Ed? You set up in January, and obviously all this has unfolded now. What's been the effect?
It's interesting, interesting times. We're fortunate enough to have a very, very, very good investor, so the support's there, and also really pleased to say that our existing customers have been very supportive. So most of the projects have continued. What's been really interesting, and I've really enjoyed being part of it, is that the team that aren't on projects at the moment have been working in the incubator, and really exciting projects that are coming out of that, and interesting in these strange times. They've taken it upon themselves to look at the current situation and look at causality across various different countries, in particular, the outliers of Germany and Sweden, really just to look at can we develop some models that identify lead indicators for a combination of either economic recovery or alternatively further waves. So yeah, it's been interesting times, but we've been very, very busy, and actually it's given us a really good opportunity to get some of the team further forward in terms of their development.
So is it a good time for companies to hire graduates, entry-level people, experienced people? Is it a good time to do that now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've all, in the great realization, we've all come to the conclusion that working from home, albeit has had some issues. Personally, the feedback I'm getting from lots and lots of individuals in terms of our customers, in terms of a lot of transparency, is that they get more time to do greater activities of a greater level of quality. So actually, I think it's definitely a great time. Obviously, there's the challenges around engaging over Zoom, etc. But we're getting better at that. So most organisations have a conference call culture anyway. So yeah, we're already starting to look at the next intake for the Bayesian program to build our team in anticipation of for future growth in the back of the year. So yeah, highly recommend it.
What positives have you taken out of it then, Ed? You mentioned about getting more comfortable with remote working and using these conferencing tools, which none of us had heard of a couple weeks ago. What else have you taken from it?
I think I've experienced as I just touched on it, a really, high level of transparency, in terms of engaging with customers and partners as to where they are in their cycle. I think it's a greater level of focus that I'm experiencing. So, where data science has a perception challenge, in a sense that it is going through the trough of delusionment at the moment. So actually, what this is doing is helping organisations prioritise those projects which potentially were continuing with no sight of value at the end of it. So actually now those projects that have thrived and have the funding, have the programs in place, are the programs that are going to deliver. So it's that focus has really helped. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur then who set up a business in 2020, which it would sound like a poisoned chalice for most people. What have you personally done to keep yourself motivated, structured? What challenges have you had in this pandemic situation, and how did you overcome them?
Yes, I mean, it is a strange time. Our when we were forming the business, the risk assessment, I got some really good feedback in terms of all the risks, but we did joke that this is one that's a global pandemic that you might not have on a risk assessment for a business plan. But personally, I've been doing a lot of reading, and really I've been writing a lot of content, and so that's taking your mind away from some of the day-to-day challenges. Been keeping fit, that's important. But the positives I'll take personally, is giving a greater level of time to activities, learning and reading. I think quite often, I've found that, we're very busy, we're supporting our customers, we're, identifying and working with new customers. You don't get that time to sit back and start to think. So our value proposition has lifted. We've identified areas where, we've got a real strength in terms of the incubator to address some of the challenges around first mile of data science projects. So lots and lots of proof of concepts either don't get started because they don't have the resources, or fail because they don't have enough capacity and haven't been defined in the right way. And conversely of that, what we've learned is the last mile of a data science project, quite often they'll go from proof of concept to development and end up half in production and at high cost to serve. So the whole, introduction of machine learning and industrialization of data science has really come out, and that's been a positive for me, in terms of identifying areas of focus for the business.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, yeah, I was listening to something recently, and I was an economist who was talking about how this situation is going to accelerate the inevitable. Do you see what I mean? So yes. Technological advancement, economic development, which was going to happen anyway, like, the high street struggling, remote working, automation, it's just going to get a bit quicker, yeah? Which I think feeds into your hands, Ed, doesn't it? In terms of what the company and the message you're trying to put out there.
Absolutely. I think, unfortunately, organizations have far too many projects. And if you look back, when big cycles of change, take structural reform in banking, ring fence the UK bank, it was imposed on the banking industry, and it had all the focus. So as a result, many projects that may have been running didn't get the oxygen they needed. So I think this is forcing organizations to pick where they're going to put their investment, and it has to be in digital transformation, and it has to be shifting the needle towards automation, AI, machine learning, to support all initiatives that they're undertaking on behalf of their business and in turn their customers.
Fantastic. Okay. What is the new normal?
So, I was talking to someone at a very large technology company only this week, and one of the big ones, and they are not planning to turn their staff to offices until at least January. And so for me, I'm hearing stories like that. The new normal, we're getting into it. We've had the honeymoon period of lockdown, and potentially for those on furlough, now is the case. January is a long way away, and there's a lot that needs to get done. So the new normal for me, is how do we work in this manner. And every aspect of what we do. My wife runs an events company. Now you can imagine that events have been absolutely decimated. She's currently working with a very large tech company as well, and they're looking to create a virtual festival for later in the summer with multiple rooms and multiple themes. So the new normal is how to be creative. I read the other day, Darwin said it's not the intelligent individuals that survive. It's not the fittest. It's those that are able to adapt to change that survive. And I think that sums up the new normal.
And you put that on LinkedIn as well. I think I liked it.
Yes.
This is something I wanted to ask you about, okay? Because this is something that I've thought about a lot, and something that obviously I'm quite involved with, being in recruitment, talking to businesses in terms of their talent strategy on a regular basis. How do you see higher education crossing over with vocational training and bridging the gap we talked about earlier on in the show? How do you see that evolving over the next couple of years? Because there's clearly something changing. There's lots of companies, who are doing a similar thing to you in different areas. We talked about Codebase earlier on, and a number of other ones like that. The Code Club is another one I've heard of recently. Who obviously focused more on the coding side, but there's other things in cyber security and other areas. How do you think this is going to play out here?
Yes, I touched on earlier that many organisations are rethinking the graduate programme.
Yeah.
And I think for that very reason, I touched on it. The idea of bringing an individual into an organisation, with high hopes to launch and accelerate their career, and they're off on a two-year rotation around, and I think organisations are having to rethink that programme. I've got a good example. I won't mention names, but when I was at Capgemini, we were working on this big initiative for a client, and there was a grad on the programme. He was new, and whatever happened, he was directed in the area of the PowerPoint presentation, and was changing the colours and being asked to contribute in that way. And this was for a financial services organisation, and quite a lot of it was about understanding the numbers and being able to articulate that. And I asked him over a beer, his third day on the team, what's your degree? And he had a first from Oxford in fluid dynamics, and so he was pretty much the brightest guy in the room, and actually, if we hadn't had that conversation, he would probably continue doing that for 3, 4, 5 months, and would have been so felt so devalued and not contributing. Whereas actually we got him heavily involved in the finance side of things, and that he helped us win the business, and wow. So I think, and don't get me wrong, I'm not deriding the graduate programs, because they're there to take a vast number of individuals through a process. I think what's going to happen is it's becoming more and more individually driven.
Yeah.
We call our program a unique development program, rather than so much a boot camp. What's unique about it is it's unique to the individual. So every single individual is almost having their own 6-month,
training program,
24-month, 2-year grad program. So because up until about 5 years ago, skills refresh was anything from 5 to 10 years. Now it's predicted to be every 2 years. So every 2 years you're refreshing your skills. So actually, what we're seeing, and you touched on some of the traditional sort of bootcamp programs, individuals are training themselves. Individuals are getting their own training. They're not relying on their employer. There's so much training out there that's a low cost point. So they're accelerating their career, and they're actually outstripping their employer. So so I think organisations are changing to support that. And because individuals are getting that technical training quicker, they're challenging their organisations more. The bit that the organisations need to focus on is that vocational element. How do we make sure we're creating rounded individuals that are great at their job and love what they're doing, than actually has been levelled at Silicon Valley is creating a digital sweatshop. And that's absolutely important. So.
Yeah, I think I was reading a blog recently, or I think we called it a blog, but it was more like a white paper. It was so long, but it was basically saying that it was talking about how the education system is largely been unchanged for a long time, and 200 years or so, and was kind of put together to get people to work in factories in the 1800s. Essentially, it's like a bit like the Ken Robinson talk. I think I mentioned it on the podcast the other day. But the labour market is changing at a lightning speed, isn't it? In terms of the kind of skills companies look for, in terms of the culture of organisations, etc., etc., etc. So I think what you're saying there is trying to sort of get some alignment between the two, because that's a big problem if we can't get that alignment right, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you as well then, we got our crystal ball out and we were talking about how things are going to materialise. How do you see the sort of current political situation around Brexit and the immigration aspect of that? Because that's a big factor in the skills gap, isn't it? Because we've always the skills gap hasn't looked so bad because we've had a lot of immigration and people coming from other countries. We've taken a lot of talent from other countries and put them in and deployed them into work in the UK. If that was just kind of the flow was to stop, I know Boris Johnson is talking about an Australian-based point system which could stem the flow of talent coming from overseas. That makes that creates more of an opportunity for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is already has had an impact with some large institutions, large organisations, moving large parts of their business to mainland Europe or afar. So absolutely, and I think it's going to be an interesting time. It's going to be an interesting time. The skilled versus non-skilled, and you touched on the points-based system, which has just been announced, as you know, should make it more straightforward for individuals from the EU and afar to come and take on a skilled job like a programmer. So, but it's whether individuals choose, and I touched on IR35 and other situations that are occurring at the same time, whether individuals choose to return to their home country to work, because it's more cost effective for them to do that, and they've got a great level of certainty. So, but we do, and we are already in conversations with that, with our early customers and our long prospect list around how we can potentially fill that gap for them in the short term.
Yeah. Well, what would you say to business owners who, need to acquire the right talent? They can't afford, the crazy salaries some of these, technical people are sort of demanding these days because of the balance of supply and demand. What would you say to them in relation to them taking a chance on a more junior option, or a team of more junior options? Because there's a lot of reservations around that, isn't there? Because of what we talked about, because of that bridge between education and industry. What would you say to those people?
Well, it is. You touched on it. Someone referred to it the other day as sort of as a high management overhead of getting these individuals up to speed. Don't get me wrong. There are many organisations out there that have very, very good programs for taking, people at the beginning of their career, graduates, and apprentice schemes. Not as many. I looked on gov.uk for data science apprenticeships, and there were 4, and 2 of them were from the same company. So we're actively looking into that an apprenticeship program. So that's potential for us to provide. But it is back to the point around giving an individual, and I know that's difficult, but you can have a set of individuals with a certain level of education that can come into a program that's going to get them into work much quicker.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What kind of things do you do to sort of keep your sort of development sort of going? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because obviously it's all about learning. I'm sure you're constantly learning doing
Yep,
this
absolutely,
on
yep.
this journey. But what do you do to develop yourself on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
I'm an avid reader, so I consume books and content continuously, and there's always something I can take from that. I think what's really interesting is having conversations, meeting individuals. In my previous role, I had a well-trodden path to customers and back. The other day, in one day I was on a bus, a train, a tube, and even a tram. So, and that was just really out meeting organisations and individuals, both in terms of looking at their career or looking at working with Bayesian. And every single conversation, I always ask myself, what can I take from that? And hopefully, what has as the individual I've been talking to taken from it? So. And that's my sort of learning. I've got two lovely daughters that keep me busy. So
that's a learning curve.
Exactly. So we're currently in the progress of learning coding and trying to get little robots doing things. So yes, a future Bayesians there.
What books have you could you sort of recommend, and what books do you like that have helped you in your career?
Oh gosh. That's a good question. I mean, because there's been so many, I think. Well, look, what I'm reading at the moment, which I wish I'd read. I wish it was the first book I read. It's called The One Thing by Gary Keller.
I've heard of it and not read it.
So it makes absolute sense. And in another book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, they made reference to it. And it just recalling this now. Andrew Carnegie in 1890.
One of the classics, then.
There was a young, I think his surname was Taylor, a young individual that was a shining star in what they call work optimization. And Carnegie apparently said, "I'll give you $10,000 if you can improve, how I work." And he wrote on a piece of paper, write down the 10 most important things that you need to get done and start at number 1. And the story goes that within 10 days, 11 days, he had written a check for £10,000 and sent it to this young guy.
Wow.
So actually, I read that in one book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, and then in Gary Keller's One Thing, and it just brought it for me. I know it seems simple, but actually, multitasking is not many people are good at multitasking.
And no men, apparently.
Oh, well, there we go. So, but this is, it's a lot more to it than one thing. But actually, if you set your mind on one thing and other individual things you're doing roll up into that one thing.
Yeah.
So really good book. I'd recommend that I'm reading at the moment.
Brilliant. Well, you kind of did a little bit answer a little bit of this there, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Well, what advice would you give to your 21-year-old self?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that that don't assume any barriers associated with age, and I think throughout the whole of your career. So because you're young and you're at the start of your career, doesn't mean to say that you can go that you can't go faster than you should be able to go as fast as you want in terms of growing your career. So seize the day. Classically, seize the day. I could go back and just say, just keep going because until you hit other barriers, if you're continuously driving yourself, and the other thing I would say is if there was such a thing as Gen Zs and Gen Ys and millennials, just ignore it all because it's a lot of it is actually written from a completely different perspective. In my experience, in every individual young that I've met, there's a higher level of emotional IQ than you think, and a lot of maturity there. And so don't allow yourself to be put into a category. Be yourself, and as I say, go as fast as you can.
It's about confidence, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
And also the other one was when you're in meetings with senior execs, picture them naked.
Yes.
So, it sounds like you've got a really excited about your model and can't wait to see how things materialise for you. Looks like you've got some really good plans. Where can people find your website? Where can they reach out to you?
Yep, www.bayesian.com with a Z. Link in with me on LinkedIn, Ed Dixon. So, and if, I'm sure through this podcast there'll be an opportunity to connect. I'd love to have a conversation with anyone, in the field of data science and how they are looking to deliver on their data initiatives.
Brilliant. Well, look, thanks for your time, Ed. That was a really enjoyable conversation. We really do appreciate it. Great stuff.
And thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Ed.